Valera versus Malfurion.
I must protect the wild.
Watch your...
All right, so it looks like Realz is going to be leading off with Druid. Again, sort of touching on the point that you made, where he's known for kind of reaching out and being sort of a mastermind in terms of strategy. Realz is very well known for his rogue play at this point, and I think it's coming out as a bit of a surprise to see him leading with Druid. But again, sort of touching on earlier when we were talking about Druid has a pretty clean matchup across the board. Not necessarily a lot of very heavily favorable matchups, but not really any heavily disfavored matchups as well. I think it's a really strong choice coming in first.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And Realz is definitely someone to kind of think not only one step ahead, but think multiple steps ahead. Perhaps he's thinking, okay, my opponent's going to think I'm running this, so then I don't want to have that matchup, so then I'll try to think what he's going to counter, counter what his counter is, that kind of thing. So, I mean, he does have the Innervate in his hand. He's just going to drop that Sun Fury Protector right away. A lot of players I think have kind of are mixed minds on this. How do you feel about that? Just getting that early minion out, not worrying about the battle cry. Do you think that's the correct decision in this situation?
I think a lot of times it's important to say battle cries, but I think that something that's more often a losing play is when you're unable to develop your board position.
Okay.
So when you can't develop your board position, what you find is that the minions' value is just lost completely because they never actually get to attack properly. So playing a turn 2 Sun Fury Protector here, not only recognizing the fact that he needs to start developing, but he also recognizes the fact that in this particular matchup, the taunt isn't a necessary effect. So choosing to forego it, I think, of course, is the right play.
Yeah, and I mean, double Innervate now in Real's hand. So if he can actually get some decent draws here, he could start to put out some pretty fearsome minions.
Yeah, sort of from Puffin's perspective, I think he would expect his opponent actually doesn't even have an Innervate.
Yeah.
So a lot of scary draws in the deck for Realz right now. If he manages to again to put something together,
that would be pretty sweet.
Ancient Allure would be a huge monster at this point, or even something like a Cairn or an Argent Commander could be a big draw right now. Instead, it's Chillwind Yeti. So he gets to keep those Innervates.
Looking like he's thinking about maybe innervating out the Argus or something. Ooh. I mean, he is kind of paused for a moment here.
Actually, I really actually like innervating
the Argus or innervating
Keeper the Grove here, because against
and then Argusing next
turn.
Really,
Edwin Van Cleef is your only real target.
Yeah.
So if he manages to get this out here, Puffin's now suddenly facing out 6 points of damage when he's at 25. And from Real's perspective, he's already got Defender of Argus, so this could potentially be like lethal in 2 turns with his swipe.
Yeah, could be pretty scary. So he is in fact going to go with that Keeper the Grove as you predicted. So
I like this play a lot.
Yeah,
actually.
It's a very nice move, and like we said, it sets up so well for the Defender of Argus next turn.
This is an example of the kind of player that Realz is, where a lot of people in this situation would have played Chillwind Yeti and then immediately passed the turn. Yeah. And you could see that's even what he was thinking about. Yeah. He slowed down and reminded himself to think through all of his plays. And this allowed not only him, but it allowed me to find this line, which is vastly superior when everything considered. This is an extremely strong play. And when you're sitting in Puffin's seat, you don't have a lot of necessarily efficient answers to what's happening.
Well, he's going to be able to take out that with the backstab plus the SI, and then it looks like he's going to coin out the sap for the Yeti, so kind of breaking up that combo quite nicely there is Puffin, and a very nice turn for him.
I actually don't like using this sap here.
Okay.
And the reason I don't like using it is because your opponent's just going to play the exact same thing next turn. Mm-hmm. And given the fact that your opponent played 2 Innervates to play the Keeper, you don't have to be worried about him innervating out something big. Yeah. And I think that's actually tricked him into playing this sap right here, because notice that he didn't actually do much with that sap that turn. Sure. All he did was manage to develop his 3/3.
The Argus, basically.
Right. And if he uses the Eviscerate, which he's going to probably have to use this turn, judging by his hand, but he doesn't actually accomplish anything by doing that. It's not like a huge misplay by any means, but what he ends up doing is he finds himself down a sap.
Yep. Definitely makes sense. I mean, I guess knowing what we know, do you think it was still a bad move? Had the Argus come out, he wouldn't have been able to kill that off with the Eviscerate, right?
Well, he could have eviscerated that turn and used his dagger instead. So I think
that's true.
Not a huge misplay by any means, but I think a mild oversight, which sometimes those end up coming back to haunt you. But again, he's got the lead here. His hand's still strong. He's got a couple card draw effects. It looks like he can sweep the board out. And Realz, mind you, he's having to play things off curve, and this is never where you want to be at with a Druid deck.
Yeah, you definitely do want to be having that nice smooth curve. Now, I mean, a lot of options here. Obviously, you could just throw out a Golem or something like that. But, do you think Druid Claw is the obvious play? Do you go taunt, or do you just go charge and trade?
It's sort of there's 2 schools of thought on this. And the first one is that if you charge, you get 4 damage out of it right now. But if you taunt, you kind of force your opponent to perhaps use cards. And I think since he's already seen the Eviscerate from his opponent, and he's also already seen a Backstab, I think that going into taunt mode here is sort of a more risky play, but one that I think he can afford to make again because he's seen a few removal spells from his opponent at this point.
Yep, definitely makes sense. Now, I mean, it looks like he's thinking about just starting off with the Shiv, looking for the card draw and seeing what he can do. He's going to throw out that Shiv, and he does get the Emwyn Van Cleef, so, I mean, potential for some sort of a combo here perhaps, but I don't know. It doesn't really seem worthwhile, and it looks like he is just going to sap that out, use the hero power, and then go for the face.
Well, I like the sap here a lot because when you sap a Druid of the Claw back to your opponent's hand, it actually takes the option away from them of being able to charge it. So if Realz wants to replay this, it has to go in taunt mode. And again, playing minions off curve is not necessarily the spot he wants to be at. And that's actually hugely indicated by the fact that he chooses to use Harvest Golem and Defender of Argus here. And I certainly agree with this, but not necessarily a comfortable spot if you're in Realz's spot, because all you kind of have going is clunky minions where your opponent seems to be ticking along all right.
Yeah, definitely. At the same time, I mean, it's not like he's in the worst position. You know, he does still have that 3/4 taunt out with the Death Rattle. He still has, you know, that Druid of the Claw in reserve. And there's obviously a number of ways he could clear this. You know, do you think he's just going to trade into that and just deal with the Death Rattle?
This is sort of a weird spot. This preparation actually is a really weird draw because it allows him to try to be able to develop a Van Cleef at some point without having something like an Auctioneer in his hand. Obviously, optimally used with Auctioneer, but he's got to be thinking at this point when his opponent, he knows he has Druid of the Claw in hand. He's got these 2 minions on the board. Druid's starting to get into its scary point where, again, a combo is 14 points of damage on an empty board. He's got to be mindful of his life total, but he also has to be mindful of the fact that with the way that he's been drawing lately, he's got to try to figure out a way to kill his opponent. So preparation, being able to effectively be +2/+2 on this Van Cleef can sort of be a blessing and a curse. If he gets too big, it's vulnerable to Big Game Hunter. But if it gets big enough, it actually can just start punching and win the game.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we do know that one of the keepers is already gone. He had already played that keeper, so doesn't have to worry about that silence as well. You know, looking at Realz's deck, he does have the one Big Game Hunter, so I mean, he does have to worry about that. But it's a tricky choice making these decisions because at some point you do just kind of have to go for it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't count. It's not like we're that many cards drawn into the deck yet. It's not guaranteed that he's gonna have the Big Game Hunter, but and one keeper's already gone. So do you think he kind of thinks there's probably a pretty decent chance here?
Well, I think what he's looking at is he's trying to find a spot where he might actually be able to conceal it, but I'm not sure that concealing it's even necessary. Oh, I like this play a lot. This Assassin's Blade is gonna come out, and he actually wants to intend to kill something on this turn 8 with an attack of this, and then using his Blade Flurry, and then playing the Van Cleef afterwards, because he knows his opponent's got this Druid of the Claw in hand. I actually like this play a lot.
Yep, makes a lot of sense, and we do see that Realz looking like he is just going to drop that Defender of the Argus and attack away. And if this were me, I'd definitely be dropping the Golem. But had he done that into a Blade Flurry that you're talking about, it could be an issue. And do you think he's kind of keeping the Blade Flurry in mind now that he has seen the Assassin's Blade come out?
I think
worrying about putting too many minions down.
I think he's keeping Blade Flurry in mind, but I think that what he might be worried about a little bit more is he played that turn pretty quickly. His opponent's got an Assassin's Blade out, so while Defender of Argus dealt an extra damage here, with that Harvest Golem in his hand, he could have potentially had 2 3/4 taunts, which wouldn't have allowed his opponent to attack this 3/2 minion if they wanted to. So he may be reading this for Blade Flurry because the way that Puffin has played this, with the knowledge that he has Druid of the Claw in hand, it makes a lot of sense that he would have Blade Flurry. But at the same time, I think he might be kicking himself for not playing the Harvest Golem the way he did. And then, of course, when he elects to not use it, it really tells us that he believes his opponent has Blade Flurry, because otherwise there would just be no reason to not play the Harvest Golem.
Yep. So I mean, he has to be making that read, just trying to minimize the losses from that, which does make sense. And I mean, it's looking like we are going to see the preparation Blade Flurry, and then he can do like Loot Order, Van Cleef, Conceal.
That's a lot of damage. I like this play. This is going to be a huge Van Cleef too, an 8/8.
An 8/8 concealed Van Cleef. Plus he gets to use the hero power. So this is pretty scary. I mean, we know that he does have the Druid of the Claw. That's going to.
This is pretty scary from both players. Puffin's all in here, and from Realz's perspective, he has ways to deal with this, but he's got to really hope his opponent can't put together something from the top of his deck. I think otherwise he's pretty comfortable, but you're looking at 2 card draws next turn.
Yeah. And I mean, if he has some way to get through that Druid of the Claw without using the Van Cleef attack, that's pretty scary.
That's a huge major issue. But that being said, Puffin's also down his 2 saps already, so that's good news for Realz. And I don't think he expected his opponent to have something like Black Knight, because his opponent is almost apparently playing Miracle Rogue. It'd be very difficult to see preparation in a non-Miracle Rogue deck. And also, ooh, wow, that's a huge draw right now. If he can put together a spell off that Loot Hoarder, this could spell really bad news for Realz. But again, credit to Realz for not playing that Harvest Golem. He read his opponent for Blade Fury rather successfully. Wow, Deadly Poison off the top.
Man.
Things are gonna get real bad here real soon.
No, he gets the
That's gonna be
Shiv too,
2
dude.
more card draws.
Oh no.
Speaking of that
And he
situation,
gets the Shadow Step.
oh my gosh, this game has suddenly taken a huge turn.
Yeah, I mean now
he
he can clear the Druid of the Claw. He can attack the face. I mean, this
You know,
is
there's
pretty
actually
scary.
some things he wants to keep in mind here.
How much would the Van Cleef? What would the Van Cleef come back out as if he Shadow Stepped it after he attacked?
I believe he's played 3 spells already,
Okay.
so it would be a 10/10.
Okay. So I mean, he could.
Wow, he could actually make his.
Do you
Van
think that
Cleef
makes
bigger.
sense? I mean, and he would get another card. Yeah. So he could actually attack the Druid of the Claw, take that 4 damage. But do you think he's nervous about being that low on HP?
Well,
Because he could do that, attack the face with the Van Cleef, then Shadow Step the Van Cleef, and replay it. If I'm not mistaken.
Some things to keep in mind is that Realz didn't kill him last turn with a combo, so he doesn't have it right now.
Yeah.
But if he has a piece of the combo, it could potentially be
enough.
really dangerous for Puffin. Because say, like, oh, he chooses to take the damage here, kind of quick, but I can't say I disagree with it. I would have liked to see Shadow Step, because Shadow Step would just replace itself. He doesn't necessarily need Shadow Step for Leroy at this point. Your opponent's already so low. But now if your opponent's got Force of Nature, you're suddenly in a really bad spot. Because it would just be game.
Yeah, Shadow Step would have been a pretty interesting play there, and it would keep your life totals higher.
Wow, Cairn is certainly not what you want to draw right now. That's an awful timing for that.
Wrath. I mean, okay, so he can do. Okay, he's going for the card draw, I guess.
He's got to go for the card draw. He 100% has to, because this board position is just lethal when he's doing it.
Well,
Ooh,
could he?
Ancient
Oh,
War.
okay. That's. I mean, could he not do the 3 damage Wrath plus the swipe plus the golem to take out? You know the.
Well, remember, Van Cleef's an 8/8 right now. He can't. He could Wrath,
Wrath.
but then how does he kill the Auctioneer?
Wrath. No, he couldn't kill the
Yeah,
Auctioneer.
he's got to kill the Auctioneer. It just looks like it's going to be it. Actually, the 5 health from this Ancient Lore wouldn't put him enough from just lethal on the board, so that's going
1
to do it.
HP. Oh my god, dude.
Wow.
Yeah, so close.
Huge turnaround.
Yeah.
Going all in on the concealing of Van Cleef. This is what we were talking about earlier.